Hello and welcome to another video based on the suggestions by the Imperator community in the Senatus Populusque. This one is I've caught up. This one was posted merely yesterday, so yeah, we had 3 Senatus videos in a row. Now you're gonna have to wait another week for the next one. But let's get into today's one, shall we? I will say immediately, this one seems to not have been very popular. So the highest vote count is 15 votes for number 1, and a mere 5 votes for the third place suggestion, which has led some, like Toady here, to suggest making some meta changes, because it's maybe a little bit of a high pace, have the votes last a bit longer perhaps, that kind of thing. I don't know. Some kind of promotion of Senatus Populusque would probably go a long way. Maybe my videos can do that if you've got any decent suggestions and you want to share them, or maybe I can just ask you to go over to the Senatus Populusque and have a look at the suggestions and read through them, see which ones you like, give votes to the ones you like, that kind of thing. But yeah, it seems to either be dying down a little bit, or I don't know what. It would be nice if there was a bit more of a push, because if we have a look, if we go back just a moment and have a look at the first week, there was quite a few votes. 69 votes on the first one. The least voted one was at 43, and even last week's one, first place had 27 votes. It's not a whole lot, is it? It's really not a whole lot. I think Ketchup's was in here, 38 votes, which is, it's a fair number of votes, but I mean that's lower than third place of the first week. So I'm hoping that this kind of suggestion forum idea is not going to whimper and die on the vine. I hope it can be revived somewhat. There's also the idea that maybe there's just not very many more suggestions to make. I don't know. It could be a number of factors, but it'd be nice to see this, pick up the pace a bit more in the future. But anyway, let's go on to the first one. In first place, 15 votes, is Spike05's thread on the second try on semi-autonomous governors. Let's have a read of it. So, hi all, last time I posted a bunch of suggestions all in one topic, but it wasn't the best of ideas, so I'll make split suggestions this time around. Before posting them in the Senatus, I'll post them on here to check feedback. I'll start with one of my favourite suggestions, setting up the autonomy of regions. So why does he think autonomy is important? Large empires tend to require too much micro, and most of the time it means not building anything sensible in a region outside of the home region. So how to do this in the non-developer, non-modder opinion is pretty simple. The AI for building stuff, for moving slaves, for trade routes, and raising armies, it's already there. It doesn't require to code a line in this regard, but more on this later. What the AI of the governor in question needs, however, is the money to do all this stuff, and it also needs to know what point to limit its own autonomy versus the player. So a few ideas. A drop-down menu from the regional view, both map mode, and click on its provinces with 3 choices. 0 autonomy, like it is now, 75% income for the treasury, 25% for the governor's dues, fully up to the player what to do. Some autonomy, so the AI can build buildings, move slaves around, 30% income for the national treasury. And then full autonomy, the AI can build buildings, move slaves, make trade routes, raise armies. 10% of the income goes to the nation, and the rest goes to the governor or the region itself. Okay, fair enough. The AI will check monthly how much cash it saved by not giving all the money to the state, and then decide what to build in accordance with the today present code. This thing can then be expanded in future updates or DLC in this way. Choosing a policy for the region will affect the priority of the governor when spending money. A further tier of autonomy can be added for allowing governors to go to war and conquest lands that are so small or far away that it's just too boring to do manually, and then add a distance from capital for management line of code to dictate the minimum level autonomy for faraway regions as it was in reality. For instance, 0 autonomy could be selectable only for regions bordering directly via land or naval range the capital region, requiring at least some autonomy after that. Regions that are doable over the naval range, for example, would require full autonomy. So it will attach a suggestion received from Ketchum and friends about the topic. Good proposal, some additional ideas. Certain forms of government could favour more or less autonomy for regions. The governor's loyalty should affect it. As in Starkitect's proposal that was on the using the CK3 style control, which we went over a few weeks ago. So, my thoughts on this. It is not something that I have not thought of before, autonomy for regions. And I think it is a good idea. I think regions really should act very, very autonomously. I would say, though, that the AI is rather terrible at constructing buildings, managing its economy, managing its own trade. It's not very good at it. It would need to be significantly improved in that regard. And that can be done not with, AI coding and making the AI smarter, but merely with, some weights on things like if there are lots of citizens here, then there should be a heavier weight on the AI's desire to build libraries or what have you. Something like that would probably go a long way, I feel. So they do need some rewritten weights and measures on, the AI's desire to do things. But other than that, it's good. I like the idea of having more autonomy sent to the provinces. I will say, though, this distance from capital for management line doesn't sit well for one particular reason for me, and that is the way that historical Rome sort of went about its province management. Like the provinces, they did have a lot of autonomy, but Egypt in particular, was not managed in this way. Egypt was managed directly by Rome because it was too important and too valuable, too wealthy, too essential to Rome, because of the grain imports and the trade coming from India, to leave in the hands of any governor. So it had to be controlled directly by Rome. And in this situation here that we have, that would not be possible because, it's very distant from the capital, and then it's certainly not bordering directly Rome, and then the navy, if it's in naval range, which I guess it would be, it requires some autonomy after that. If it's double over the naval range, it probably wouldn't be. Certainly not at the point when Rome took Egypt, which is actually outside of the game's time frame, but regardless, require full autonomy. That, like I say, it makes sense. It's just the way I'm thinking of, you need to be able to select these things in maybe some kind of government capacity like EU4 has, maybe that could come into play. Like, maybe later on in the game, there's a law that allows you to control an extra province, an extra region, without massive autonomy, that kind of thing. I don't know for sure, but it is something definitely that is interesting. I like the idea. It's not something I haven't thought of before. I think, giving more autonomy to provinces is a good thing. Provinces really should act very independently, though I would not be in favor of them being able to declare war themselves. If I could dictate a war to them, I'd be happier with that. But the way that the AI declares war and, the massive border guard, I'm just thinking of Crusader Kings 3 right now. I don't like the AI declaring war in that game. It would be historical, like you think of Julius Caesar kind of independently going after Gaul, independently going into Britain. That it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. But I don't think the AI is really up to task in that regard. So I don't know. But yeah, good start. Good start. I like the suggestion. You can have a like. Actually, that's a good point that I just skimmed at the bottom there. It wouldn't be similar to the original sectors in Stellaris, the AI-controlled sectors, because we hated because the AI taking over aspect. We didn't hate it because the AI took over. We hated it because the AI was shit at it, basically. All right, next up, we've got Improving the Religions of India by Vaishan. So let's have a look there. I don't know too much about the religions in India, so this should be interesting. So, India during this time period is fascinating. You got the rise of Buddhism, the Mauryan Empire, the Sramana movement was in full swing as philosophers and monks debated about spiritual and philosophical matters. Moreover, the Indian continent is a massive place with many different religions. Yet in the game, there isn't really this diversity. all of India is mostly a massive blob of Hindu with pockets of Jainism and Buddhism. You don't have the tribal religions that existed and still exist. Nothing on the Hindu philosophers, no Buddhist councils, no Jain councils. The other Sramanic spiritual philosophers, such as the Ajivika, Ajnana, and Charvaka. Pronounced all those perfectly, first time, as per usual. So the TLDR of my suggestion is simple. Add these in to make India a more diverse place religiously and internally for the Maryans or any other empire. So for Jainism, while it's not as young as Buddhism, it's still young and dynamic. For the last undivided Jain, Acharya was about as a split would divide the Jain community. There was also the fact that Chandragupta was a Jain, or at least became Jain later in life. During the reign of Chandragupta, there was a 12-year-long famine. Followers of Bhadrabahu moved from Magadha to Karnataka to survive this famine. When the famine was over and the followers returned to Magadha, the followers found that the Jain monks who stayed in Magadha had adopted white clothes. This, along with debates over the authenticity of the Angas, caused a split to happen with Jainism. The white-clothed monks would become the Svetambara sect, while the ones that kept to nudity for the monks would become the Digambara. For Imperator, this should be an event chain to show this schism. To reflect the sects, I think a trait should be applied to Jains after the event happens, which splits them apart. This trait would boost opinions with the same trait and decrease opinion with the opposite. Alright, I had no idea that there was a great schism in Jainism. Also, like I said, I know very, very little about the Indian religions of this time, or really even now, to be honest. It's not something I've had a great amount of exposure to, so I will own my ignorance there. But yeah, seems interesting, and always they're having more regional flavor is always going to be a good thing. So yeah, Salikana is the practice of voluntarily fasting oneself to death. Okay. Or the ultimate triumph over human passions. Not much of a triumph, in my opinion, but whatever. Famously, himself, Chandragupta would abdicate and die practicing Salikana. So, to represent this in Imperator, there should be a chance for a devoted or zealous character to basically commit suicide in this way. As this was the method that Chandragupta himself died, a ruler might have the decision to abdicate first and then die fasting in the woods. Lovely. Okay. Currently in Imperator, the deities of Jainism that exist are Diwali festival, Rishabhanatha's teachings, Satya, Ahimsa, Moksha of Neminatha, Paryushana festival, wisdom of Bhadrabahu, Aparigraha, Moksha of Rishabhanatha, oh god, I'm done. These should hear that some of those deities are just festivals. The Agyar ritual, which is just a ritual, so two separate mokshas respecting two Tirthankara. Then you got several virtues which, in my opinion, make no sense. In short, the deities are a bit of a mess. So his suggestion for the deity listing. So for culture, Amisa, Neminatha, Moksha, Bhadrabahu. Okay, for economic, we've got Aparigraha, Rishabhanath. I'm so bad at these pronunciations, apart from the fact that I get them perfect every time, but still. And then for fertility, Mahavira, Parshavanatha, and Satya. Alright, so that's a decent number of deities. Maybe there could be more. I also see no warfare deity. Oh, there we go. You might notice no war deity for Jainism. That's on purpose. Ahimsa is central to Jainism after all. However, to compensate, Jainism would basically get a free slot for the other three categories of deities to worship. You could choose a war god here, but it would have to be non-Jain war deity. I think this might make Jainism a bit more unique as a religion focused more on internal matters. That's interesting. Yeah, for sure. Again, I have no idea about Jainism. I don't know if there are any war gods, so I'm just going to take this guy's word for it that that's not a thing. So, alright, moving on. Buddhism. Buddhism in Imperator is young, dynamic, and figuring out what it is. It starts before Ashoka's rise and the push outwards to spread the Buddha's Dharma. It's also well within the early schools of Buddhism. Playing a Buddhist kingdom should be taking the reins of a young and dynamic faith. There are a number of early schools in Buddhism, roughly 18 or 20 depending on which sources you follow. Schools like those ones and those ones, just to name some of the early Buddhist schools, representing the diversity and dynamic nature of these schools, as well as where some were sub-schools of the others and evolution of Buddhism, should be something to experience when playing as a Buddhist ruler. In our timeline, only Theravada remains of these original schools, descending from that tradition, if I recall correctly. However, because of how young and dynamic the religion is during Imperator's time, other fates should be possible. Perhaps the other schools survive in addition to Theravada. Perhaps one becomes far more influential during the Third Buddhist Council. These schools would best be represented by a trait and events about debates among the monks. More events is good. So during the reign of Ashoka, the Third Buddhist Council was called. It was from this council that missionaries were sent across the world to spread Buddhism. Though the council was called to deal with heretical views, and the refutation to these heresies were compiled in that thing. Any Buddhist ruler who rules a nation that has the rank of great power can call for the Third Buddhist Council. It should require some influence. It would unlock the missionary events where missionaries are sent throughout the world. This can only be once in the entire game by one nation. If you're a Buddhist nation that isn't a great power, you should get the option to send a monastic envoy to the council to support the position of the nation in question. This would also create dynamism in areas around India, as with the exception of the missionary that went east to Burma, you have Sri Lanka, you have the various regions of southern India, you have the Himalayas, you have Bactria and the lands of the Greeks. So once the Third Buddhist Council is concluded, you should see over time some missionaries coming to the land to teach this new philosophy even in the Greek states. I believe Menander actually converted to Buddhism. Menander being, the guy from the Menander patch. But yeah, he was, I believe, a convert to Buddhism. I believe it may have been after this Third Buddhist Council. I don't know for sure. But I think it was in Bactria at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. So, the Greeks who lived in Bactria and later the Indo-Greek kingdoms practiced a syncretic form of Buddhism as they mixed it with Hellenism. It was from here that the anthropomorphic artwork of Buddha first originated. This is something I did know, that the first Buddha arts are Greek in origin, which is kind of funny. There should be some events to reflect the changing artistic styles that are developing within Hellenic Buddhism. Perhaps some events to reflect the nature of the syncretic nature of Buddhism for the Hellenic, such as how Heracles became the guardian and defender of the Buddha. While this can be done now with just picking Heracles as a Buddhist ruler. Events to reflect how these deities are being regarded within Buddhism might be interesting to show how Hellenism is syncretizing with Buddhist thought. Perhaps some unique Buddhist deities if you're of a Hellenic culture to reflect the syncretization going on. So where regular Heracles would keep its regular description, Buddhist Heracles would mention that he is a guardian of the Buddha. These events can add to the immersion as you play syncretic Hellenic Buddhist ruler, especially if you try to spread it westwards to the Greek world. Yeah, I'm in favor of that. How long is this? Oh my god. Oh, it's quite long. Okay. So, Ajivika, a philosophy of fatalism founded by Makali Gosala. They strongly believed in Niyati, or fate. The nature of this philosophical school was atheistic in origin, denying a creator or unseen mover, and subscribing to the concept of atomism. They also believed that everyone had an Atman, though in contrast to other philosophies coming out of the Sramana movement, Gosala believed that the Atman was part of the material world. This soul helps the body in meditation and passes through many lifetimes before it reaches its predestined salvation. They had their own texts that codified the teachings of Gosala and others, though we've lost them through time. However, a ruler that follows the Ajivika school should be able to compile the texts and spread them throughout the empire. Similar to both Buddhists and Jains, they were ascetics, and the value of ahimsa was also important to them, as was being vegetarian. During the reign of Bindusara, it was at the height of popularity, though declined following his death and the rise of Ashoka. However, as neither start ruling the Mauryan Empire at the start of the game, the fate should not be determined for them. It should be possible for the Ajivika to become out as one of the main religious traditions in the Mauryan Empire. Yeah, makes sense. Charvika, one of the other Sramanic spiritual traditions that lost out to Buddhism and Jainism. Charava is a hedonistic spiritual philosophy. They denied that karma, reincarnation, samsara, afterlife, and religious rites. They rejected the Vedas and focused on observing the natural world because to them, truth can only be granted from observances. Inference as a means to establish valid universal knowledge and metaphysical truths were rejected. They also were a hedonistic philosophy similar to Greek Epicureans. They believed that there was nothing wrong with sensual pleasure. Their focus was on rejecting pain and maximizing pleasure. Unlike many of the Indian philosophies of the time, Charvika did not believe in austerities or rejecting pleasure out of fear of pain, and held such reasoning to be foolish. So, some other Sramanic movements. Unfortunately, the knowledge of what we know tends to mainly from the point of view of Jains, Buddhist, and Hindu philosophers. The Ajnana, Purana, Kassapa, and those ones. Yeah. Okay, so finally, on to Hinduism. Hinduism during this period is dynamic. It's transforming through the Hindu synthesis as philosophies are born. However, it's still very much the Vedic religion with the Vedic gods and goddesses. So I've got some Vedic rituals. While the Hindu synthesis is occurring, many of the ancient Vedic rites and rituals are still practiced. These can give some unique events and decisions for Hindu rulers. For example, when you get a new king, it'd be cool to have the flavor text describing the Rajasuya ceremony, or that horse sacrifice that kings practice to prove their sovereignty and legitimacy. A number of Hindu philosophical, Jesus, were being debated and expounded upon during this time. You have the schools of Samkhya, Yoga, Nyaya, and that one that existed before the game start. During the game's time frame, there's also the development of the Mimamsa school of philosophy, which arose around the final century BCE. So perhaps rulers can ascribe to one of these philosophies or promote philosophers that support them. There are a number of different deities worshipped throughout India during this time that are not in. Furthermore, it seems like there is more stuff for the later deities than the Rig-Vedic ones that would be worshipped throughout India. Moreover, similar to how Hellenism, there should be cultural deities. In particular, I'm looking at southern India versus northern India here. So new deities split between north and south. Those ones and those ones, I'm not even going to try. We'll be here all day and I'm just going to ruin them. There are also many more gods and goddesses north and south that can be added, but I think these would be good to help show the diversity. So we've got some tribal religions, a number of tribal religions in India that still exist. Bathuism in Assam, Donya Polo in Arunachal Pradesh, Kiratism within Nepal, that place in there, that place in there. All these tribal religions still exist, and including them would help show that India is a massive place, which it absolutely is. It's colossal. General stuff for all religions, so we should have literature. It's an era where different movements and religions wrote plenty of literature and polemics against one another. Should be events about them and patronizing them. It was after all the era of Sangam period in Tamilakam, which is in the south, I know this, where you had Buddhist and Jain scriptures were eventually written down. The epics of the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita were written down. Buddhist and Jain sutras were composed as well. Patronizing different movements. It should be possible to support building temples of different religions. You should be able to build temples of all the different temples. Be able to build temples of the different temples for different faiths in your towns and cities. It could be extended basically every faith in the game as well. And aesthetics. Amongst our India from the different religions, ascetic would be a trait with suitable state changes to reflect that they are focusing on ascetic goals and not being a ruler. Prince and princesses that become ascetics should generally not be in the line of succession anymore. The goal of these changes is to make playing in India more unique and more diverse and flavorful to play in. As a big player in is the Maori, it should hopefully add more internal things for them to deal with and make playing them more fun. I'd love to hear people's thoughts. My thought is, oh, my poor throat. Alright, so this was a chunky suggestion, and I am, again, I'll just point out once again, I know very little about the Indian religions. It's not something I've been exposed to, so I'm going to own that ignorance here and say anything that increases the amount of flavor for a particular region is a good idea. If, I'm not saying it is or that it isn't, if all of this here presented information is correct, then I see no reason to not add all of it. I don't see any balance issues. I don't see any problems that this would create. I think it's just, it's more flavor, and I have no problem with that. So yeah, very, very well researched suggestion, very well presented, very long. Maybe a little bit of consolidation might have been helpful, mostly to me, But otherwise, yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I can't disagree with anything. Good stuff. All right. Finally, we have Pilbur's suggestion: Greek. Oh my God, words. Oikumene, an organic and dynamic community of the Greek world, loosely inspired by the EU's HRE. Sorry, Europa Universalis' HRE, and it received 5 votes. So, in view of bringing flavour to the game and fleshing out diplomacy, I think the wider Greek world would be nicely represented by some form of ad hoc mechanic. So, using the EU4 HRE system as a broad reference, of course, many differences should be allowed. I'm aware that similar ideas were proposed here and there in the past, but I did not find any recent and organic proposal in this subforum mirroring this one. I spotted a thread created by Crownstiller while checking the sub, and I found some similarities to my idea. They're related to specific leagues and not overall community of all Greek states. Alright, so some people made similar things before, don't worry about it. The main historical inspiration for the proposal: the role played by Philip and Alexander as leaders of the Greek alliance in the revenge war against Persia, the competition among the Diadochi and their successors for prestige and authority in Greece, both for controlling its cities and boosting recruitment and immigration in their newly conquered Asian kingdoms, the rise of Rome, which liberated Greece from the Macedonians and later subjugated it. The main features would be membership of the Greek community with some unique diplomatic options. Arguably, all Greek culture nations would be able to join. Some geographical limitation could be discussed, or if someone created a Greek colony in the Baltic Sea. Also, what about Bactria? That's pretty far away. Possibly some mechanism to allow the admission of foreign powers, Latin and Italic only, in meeting specific criteria. The hegemon would be roughly similar to the EU4 HRE Emperor. Bonuses, additional responsibilities and diplomatic options, for example, defending Greek cities from external invaders, funding of temples and other construction projects, etc. Huge potential for interesting options here. The role to be held by counties and/or tied to specific characters, also considering the role of republics, allowing Rome to fill this role if certain criteria are met. The end game for Rome should be dismantling or reforming this Greek HRE. Fair enough. Allow this role to be vacant if no one is suitable to lead the Greek world. Gameplay effect for smaller states, the ability to negotiate with stronger powers, exchange political support for protection or other benefits. The role of the Diadochi and Hellenistic kingdoms, included either as members with particular status or as external bidders for influence, reputation, manpower, and immigration. The immigration part will be very important for immersion, and hopefully gameplay-wise if the devs are reworking manpower and tying units to culture. Strategic dilemma for the Hellenistic kings, directly ruling Greek cities or granting them some sort of autonomy inspired by the propaganda of the Antagonids in real life. Different pros and cons for each playstyle, and then a rework of the Olympics, potentially in addition to other games and festivals. Okay, kept the proposal short and simple, appreciated because my throat is killing me after that last one. Of course, if it could be vastly expanded or changed, I'm more than happy if someone is willing to improve it. I would say that I like it. I like the idea of it. I think having some kind of UI element that would be every Greek city-state, and I think any Greek state that has less than like 4 provinces. However many provinces Athens has, I think that should be the limit, because Athens is definitely considered a city-state in like this kind of standard, but not in game standard. So you should allow all these small Greek states to be a part of it, and then there would be a separate kind of area for the hegemon of the Greeks, and I guess Athens would be a good contender for that. The Diadochi would also be trying to fight for it, and I guess their role would be to defend the Greeks from outside influence. And you know what? I like the idea of it quite a lot. So yeah, I see no issues with that, and here you can have another like, up to 7 now. But yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on all of these suggestions that we have talked about today. We've got the autonomous governors, got improving India, and the Greek community suggestions. I'd like to know your thoughts, so please do leave them in the comment section below. Hopefully there is going to be a bit more activity and more pushed for, more interactivity, I guess is just the right word, in the Senatus Populusque going forward. So please do go and check all of these out. Leave likes on the ones you like. Go have a look at the other suggestions, and yeah, just interact with the community. That'd be pretty cool. But anyway, I'm going to head off now, so thank you all very much for watching. If you'd like to support me, I have a Patreon page. There's a link in the description. But likes and comments for the algorithm are also much appreciated. Thanks all so much for watching, and I'll see you next week for another Senatus Populusque. See you then. Bye-bye.